right. Well, as you've heard, I work for Inmarsat. Been working for Inmarsat roughly a decade now. But being in the satellite industry for at least twice as that, I obviously share the excitement of the other speakers of being physically at an event once more after a long time. I think the good analogy is the one we were discussing with Giampiero and Alberto. It's like, you remember after summer break where you had your first day of school, you feel excited, happy, but a little bit of discomfort about speaking in public in this case again. The topic I'm going to address in the next 15-20 minutes is remote services and the challenges associated with that. So I'm going to speak to that a little bit, so clustering the challenges, and with the time at disposal, I'm forced to oversimplify a little bit, but the ambition is to table the topics for further discussion. For instance, in the round table later on, I'm going to tell you what we are trying to do to contribute to eliminating or at least mitigating these challenges, a couple of practical examples. And then, as I always try to do when I'm on this stage, I try to share some objective facts or figures that we collect through our networks, because given the footprint of Inmarsat, that is something that can be used as a proxy to how we're progressing in what we call the digitalization of the industry. And I understand that that's been well received the other times that I've done that, so that's what I'm going to try to do. All right, so I'm going to start by sharing again, the sort of the mindset that's been driving our work in the last 2-3 years. This mindset is not only, we're not the only one having this mindset, the one that you see in this slide, so that in the mid-long term, everything that can be done without manual intervention should be digitalized. And I agree with Andreas this morning that there are, at least we do have also sort of targets associated with that. But that's sort of the mindset, the vision, if you want, that has been driving a lot of our work. And the last year and a half has done nothing but reinforcing that type of mindset. It's not to this audience that I need to drop figures and fact about the constraints that the pandemic has put on the industry and the fact that has been disruptive. And disruptive means not only flexing revenue down or eventually up in a positive disruption, but in this particular case, for many of us, has meant business continuity. And there's a big difference between $1 and $0. That moves a lot of investment on the back of it. So, a lot of momentum, increased attention, certainly from Inmarsat, say, okay, we're on the right track. We're doing something that's meaningful. But certainly the pandemic, COVID, has not taken away the challenges or the difficulties to design and effectively deploy remote services, digital tool. We heard this morning multiple times, that's the predominant force for sustainability. I think Sophia said. Maria, you said something else, and Andreas, I think there's something that we can all agree that that's a powerful tool for us, and that for certain reason, we're not getting it perfectly right. I slightly disagree that first movers fail, or that maybe there's a statistic around that. But there's also first mover that really that are able to pivot. That's one of the qualities you need to have, and they're very resilient. If you do have this quality, then you can go a long way. So, but anyway, what I've done is again, with the risk of oversimplifying a little bit, I have clustered these challenges, the challenges that we face in design and executing, into 3 buckets, 3 big themes: connectivity, accuracy, and ship dynamics. And I've tried to, without going too much into detail, to put some sub-themes for each one of these, and I'll peel them off one by one with you. Again, I'm putting the arguments on the table for further discussion. There's no ambition here to be exhaustive at all. And clustering is is sort of a subjective exercise to a certain extent. So certainly all of you might have your own view. You can add, you can subtract. But at least we have a good conversation. So on the connectivity side, 3 elements, self-explicatory. I assure you, and this is probably obvious, there is no conversation that we have today on digital tools, on connectivity, that does not have on top of the agenda cybersecurity. None of them. With our customers, with our partners, that's number one. As you increase data exchange, as you have a proliferation of stakeholders. As the cyber interaction increases, the cyber risk increases as well. And my view, but I think that's a factual view, certainly is an educated view, there is no way you can bring this risk to zero. The only thing that we can do is to partner with technology company and have a mindset that, it's continuous progression. We need to stay ahead of the competition. The competition in this case is the cyber threat, but you don't bring it to zero. So the quality of the partners that you want is a quality that, he's investing into, is always pushing on the pedal, and is always challenging itself. Capacity, quite obvious as well. For digital tool, digital development, remote services, you need to have the right capacity that provides you the right user experience, and that's not trivial. And that capacity needs to be available. That means it needs to be there at the right time. And because it's a scarce resource, and in our environment it's costly, it doesn't need, you need to make sure that when you make it available to a digital tour or digital utility or remote services, it doesn't congest the system, or it doesn't take it away from other places. So you need to assure it's an holistic view that you need to have across the whole vessel. On the accuracy side, quite obvious, the data that you collect and you exchange needs to be precise and accurate enough. Actually enough. It needs to have the right accuracy and the right precision. More or less than what is necessary generally brings not the desired performance and certainly not the desired economics. So that's very important. Slightly less obvious is the fact that when you exchange data, you need to be very mindful of the contextual setting. It needs to be representative. The data that you exchange needs to be representative of the context. Good data out of its context can be as bad data, and it's not precise and accurate data. And traceability is also very important. Poster child of this is remote surveys. I know there are class societies here that probably, some of this mimics some of the class society literature, what I'm telling you right now. So they're probably very important for them to have data is tamper-proofed. You can audit that data. That's very important. So when you design the system, that you need to have these things in mind. Ship dynamics refers mostly to what's going on the ship in terms of crew involvement. And I think it's important to acknowledge. It's important to know that as we digitalize the industry, so to say, it's very difficult, and we come up with the digital tools or utilities, it's very difficult to completely remove manual intervention or intervention of the crew. And we need to start with that. And at least there is statistically, most of the things that we're doing still requires certain work from the crew. And so with that in mind, with that axiom in mind, when we design and develop these things, we need to understand that that amount of work that we confine to the crew needs to be minimized because they're busy. They're busy doing something else. And so that's very, very important. People that design stuff in their office and stuff sometimes don't have that feeling. And then when you go into execution, things break, and then they don't pick up. Now, there's another thing which is very important, and probably is an even more stronger element of friction when you go into execution, because everything, where things breaks is in execution. The PowerPoint at home, we're all kings and queens of PowerPoint in our offices. But when you go into and put it, and trust me, I have scars to demonstrate that I know that, because I've made my share of mistakes, that's when things break. And one of the things that I've seen, and some of the mistakes I made, concerns the fact that when you think about a new model, a new digital way to do the same thing, well, generally, you remove certain activities on board of the ships, but those activities that need to be performed by the crew requires different skill set. And what that means is that you need to think about the resource, time, money to train these people to do these new things. And it's not given that they will do it or that they want to do it. So that's a massive element of friction. That's a massive challenge that need to be thought way ahead. The last point here is actually the first point. We heard it in the presentation. It's absolutely non-negotiable. It's safety, non-negotiable. So when that requirement, and safety means health and environment, it's when that requirement comes along and you bump into that wall, it's non-negotiable. You just withdraw, go back to your whiteboard, and think it through one more time. All right, so at least to conceptualize it, 3 buckets: connectivity, accuracy, ship dynamics. These are things, at least these things, then there are others, certainly, things that you want to keep in mind when you navigate the remote services, the digital tool designing. All right? So in Inmarsat, given its core capabilities, what it's been doing for 4 years, can obviously contribute mostly on the connectivity domain. So we've been asked this morning, what new technologies are available? What new tools? What are you guys doing to bring new technology that help us out? So we have been working in the last 2 or 3 years to try to develop enabling technology, because connectivity is enabling technology. You cannot have digital without connectivity. What have been doing to try to make things better? And I'm not saying it's perfect. Certainly we're a first mover. Certainly we need people to engage with us and tell us what's working and what's not working. But things that I'm sharing with you today, we think so far it's a very powerful enabler. And it's the service of dedicated connectivity, which hinges fundamentally on the concept of multi-tenancy on a ship. I'll try not to be too technical, but the concept is quite simple. The concept of multi-tenancy is you have a single telecommunication on board of the vessel, a single terminal, a single rack, and you're able today, with this new technology, to serve multiple parties with this, provided they have the right to access the ship with a telecommunication line. But we can use the same terminal on a ship now to have a very effective, against the challenges that I mentioned before, a very effective system of communication that can be used by not only the ship manager or ship owner, ship operator, but also third parties and multiple third parties. And here's where I'm showing my very strong PowerPoint skills. I apologize for the drawing. This is what pictorially it looks like. Again, a little bit of a simplification, but we are now able to put, on the primary connectivity, segregate completely another bandwidth pipe on top of it, which we call, in this particular design, it's called Fleet Connect Services, but a secondary connectivity, within which you have, again, segregated VLANs is a technical term, segregated bandwidth pipes that each one could be allocated to an application, a digital tool, an application provider. That seems extremely simple, but trust me, it's not simple to do. And it's not simple to do in a way that, as I said, addresses the challenge that I described before. So this is new technology. We're asking what new technology is available. This is, in an industry like ours, this is very new. And it can be used with application or such as the one that are listed here. Telemedicine, Actis Update, health management, and so on and so forth. And it does progress on the front of the challenges, because segregating bandwidth pipes makes them secure. I'm not saying that you don't have to have edge security controls, UTMs, and so like, on cybersecurity, you don't have the risk of overdoing. But this segregation of bandwidth pipe, it's very, very important. And obviously, well, our network is a military-grade level of security, so that certainly helps. The fact that you have bandwidth that you can allocate to single application, it means you can tailor them. It means you can give the right capacity. That's very important, and the right flexibility. And that helps the economics. It doesn't help only the user experience, but it helps the economics. Because if something is not economically viable, that certainly stops, at least in the commercial world. Now, the fact that you have separate pipes also prevents congestions. And then the commercial plans that we're able to, in a creative way and with our customers put together, then also allow, for instance, portability across ships, or allows the occasional use type of services so that you only use what you need, and so on and so forth, so that the actual business case close, so that it's sustainable in the long term. All right, so this is happening today, and the year-to-date growth rate of links of this service is roughly 25%. As I said, I'm going to give you other numbers later on so that you have a view of what's going on, at least from our viewpoint. And just to give you a couple of real examples, 2 press releases recent. First one is on ocean technology, which is a global leader, you probably know it. global leader in compliance and navigation, they are using this technology now, or they're trying to walk into this technology to deploy their services. That reduces setup time, it minimizes disruptions, and it does increase cybersecurity against a USB stick that goes end-to-end type of approach. The other one, it's to me groundbreaking. We announced this at the London International Shipping Week, and it is the partnership that we have with the Class Society. Certainly groundbreaking for Inmarsat. From a business perspective, this is a massive diversification of customer base from just a pure commercial, but it's nice that a Class Society and a telecommunication operator came together and designed this. And this is to facilitate remote surveys. So with their technology, which is called Remote LR, specifically engineered digital tool, and the Fleet Connect dedicated bandwidth, the idea, and this is already live on vessels, the idea is that we make the remote surveys much frictionless, and crew can safely stream audio, video, and pictures, photos to an expert onshore, a Lloyd's Register expert onshore. So, this is very important for us. Once again, I'm not claiming that there are not challenges and this will scale immediately like this. I'm certain that things, there are a lot of things that we still need to learn, but this is for us is real progress. All right. Then, as I promised, giving as I said, the footprint of Inmarsat, few objective facts that to me give us a reasonably moderate optimism that we're going in the right direction. And these are, if you look at it, this is both lagging and leading indicators, so you can see the past and the future. First is the adoption of our platform, which is, you can think, at least we think it as an addressable market for digital services, because without the Fleet Express platform, which is the connectivity platform, we're not able to put this on top, over-the-top value-added services like the segregated bandwidth pipe for application that I described before. This is growing, continues to grow double-digit, and it's more than 11,000 active activation. And it's growing, as I said, very, very rapidly. And so that's good for us, because that signifies a technology transition from narrowband to broadband. It's a fact, right? It's not only us that are deploying these systems. Other companies are doing the same thing, but there's clearly a technology shift. The bandwidth consumption is increasing, and it's been increasing like hell in the last. There's a COVID factor here, right? But it's true that it continues to grow and grow and grow. 22% consumption growth year to date, and a lot is related to crew welfare. But what's interesting from what we can see on the network is that also the share of business application traffic is growing. The share of business application traffic has been growing 12% year to date. All these figures are year to date. So then the figure I mentioned before, 25% increase of active dedicated bandwidth links. So now we have hundreds of ships out there that use this. And interesting is also how many companies, application providers, are joining our ecosystem. 25% growth also in this case. These are companies that come to us, sign a certain number of agreements, and then are eligible to buy, for instance, that dedicated bandwidth. I'm not stating that they're all active and they're succeeding. As statistically, there's always a percentage that only makes it through, but there is a lot of companies that believe that we're doing something right and they want to be part of it, and that's very, very important, very encouraging. And last but not least, I haven't talked about this today, but I've talked about the Fleet Data IoT platform in the past, so many of you know it. That's the discussion we were having before. You were saying, okay, what if we could collect data all in one single central location from ship? That's happening now. we're deploying by default this IoT data aggregator and collector with our kits, and we have hundreds of ships now that send at least a minimum amount of data in a single location that we can use. How do you break the chicken and egg problem? Well, one of the way, not the only way, is company like ours sticking their neck out financially. So this is a millions of dollars investment where we actually subsidize the kits going out there. So we pay for it. The installation and the hardware is paid by us. The service is free of charge, the basic services. We're not charity, we're a commercial company, so we wouldn't do this if we didn't see a commercial benefit. Let's be clear, but that's one way you break it. You stick your neck out, you take an entrepreneurial risk. All right, so my last slide is a quote from a director of Lloyd's Register that we work with to put together the agreement that I showed you before, and we like it because it recognizes the efforts that we have made, how long what progress we've made, and the connectivity is absolutely essential. So that's very good for us, and it also signifies that when interests are aligned, and there is a way to align interests, then we can work together to make new things happen. So it's a positive message. All right, with this, I'm closing, so ready for questions if you have any, either now or later. If you don't, you can email me, you can connect with me, and I thank you for the attention.
Do we have any questions from the floor? Rob? Yes.
There we go. Stefano, just on the idea of dedicated bandwidth with solution providers, I remember having a discussion with someone before, talking about the idea of if I have a connectivity contract which is always on as much as you can eat at the bandwidth level you can get, what's the necessity to add on a separate channel for that? If it creates cost for the application provider who then is going to bundle that into the invoices that they charge to the ship, then is the ship paying for an unlimited channel plus also the connectivity that they're going to subsidize?
That's a good question.
So yeah, where does the business case come in terms of if you've got unlimited connectivity, what's the extra benefit?
Well, the subject could be addressed. Well, the straightforward answer for you is cybersecurity, tailor-made plans, ability for higher SLA from the application provider, predictability of cost. Some of the answer, each one would deserve a full explanation. I'm going to try to be very brief. Cybersecurity is segregated. It doesn't impact. It's not congesting the primary connectivity. You'd be surprised how many ship managers that have stroke agreements with application providers and they are subscribing a certain connectivity plan and don't want to subscribe an higher connectivity plan. They think that, because they have that best effort type of plan, then they can fit everything in that pipe. That's not true. And they're discovering that very badly. And this comes down to, it creates a lot of friction between the application provider and the ship owners, because one said, okay, well, you got VSAT, so the bandwidth is there. It's an open pipe, go for it. The application providers actually has requirements which are much, much heavier. It congests the ship. The service is not delivered. Who's the fault? The actual bandwidth provision is not part of the SLA, my other point, of the application provider. With something like this, I'm not saying you can try both and see whether it works, but your assumption is based on the fact that the ship manager, ship owner, whatever is buying that primary connectivity has bought enough bandwidth to support multiple applications, and that the responsibility, liability to make sure that that connectivity is there stays with the ship owner, and there's not a logic, which I'm not saying it's always applicable, but it is applicable sometimes, whereby the service level agreement of the application provider includes the fact that the connectivity is there, which obviously requires, he pays for the connectivity, he obviously decreases load on the primary connectivity, the ship manager can take possibly a smaller one, but I show you the degree of amount of bandwidth for crew welfare, how it's growing, and it's a scarce resource. And then, as I said, the application provider then can can possibly demand a premium. That's a commercial discussion between the two, because if the connectivity is down, whose problem is this? It's the application provider. Again, it's not a model that can work for everybody, but I'm telling you there's a strong logic for that.
So it's not just a bandwidth issue, it's a way for application providers to provide a managed service almost.
It's part of it.
Rather than just taking the
It's
bandwidth
part
from
of
here
it.
to there.
Then you decide what's more or less important for you. Is that more important not to congest the primary connectivity? Is that when you get, that you really want to make sure that your operational line is segregated from everything else? Do you care about cybersecurity? I guess you do. Do you want to have all the application going on the same pipe? Everybody's got different interests. They are all important, and the degree of importance varies depending on who you're talking to and your budget and how, where your mindset is with respect to your learning curve on digital.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stefano. I think, do we have time for one more question, Kathy?
One more.
One more? Is there a question from the floor? Well, I have a question then, Stefano.
All right.
Do we have a scaling limit to how many satellites we can have up there? And how can we somehow manage that if there is such?
Okay. The way to think about this is an analogy with real estate. Right? So when you put a satellite, I don't know how many spacecraft expert are there, but when you build, you put up a building, you need the land, you need turf. That's the same thing for satellites. So it's, by definition, it is. Then we think about higher frequencies because interferences, interference comes before physical space. There's a problem of debris, and we know that with the more satellites we put up there, there's a big discussion about debris. But the major limiting factor is the proximity of satellites because of frequency interference, and there is a big process. You don't get a space like this. There's a big process to bring it up. But the answer to your everything else being equal, working on the same frequency, we're already saturated certain places. So that's why, for instance, we're moving on different orbits and we're moving on different frequencies.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefano.